Easter. For millions of people, it's a huge holiday. But what's it really all about at its core? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig right into that question. And we're going to use a specific Christian lesson guide as our roadmap to see how it presents Easter as this major event that connects all of history with modern-day belief.
So the guide we're looking at kicks things off with this really powerful idea that the life of Christ is central to all human history. I mean, wow, that's a massive claim, right? It covers everything. So our first job is to figure out what the guide actually means by that. Let's break it down.
And just so we're all on the same page, everything we're about to cover comes directly from this source material. It's a lesson guide called He Will Swallow Up Death in Victory. So our goal here isn't to give our own take on it, but to simply walk you through its main ideas exactly as they're presented so we can all get a handle on this particular perspective on Easter.
All right, let's get right into it and tackle that central claim. The guide's first big idea is that the resurrection, the event at the absolute heart of Easter, isn't just some moment that happened a long time ago. Instead, it's presented as this link that connects everyone across all of time.
Okay, so how does the guide actually explain this connection? Well, think of it like a giant bridge spanning all of history. The way they put it is that people of faith before Jesus were looking forward to a Savior who was promised, and people of faith after him are looking back at that same promise being fulfilled. So from this viewpoint, Easter becomes the central anchor point, locking in thousands of years of belief on both sides of the event.
Okay, so if this event is a huge historical anchor, how does the guide back that up? Well, it all comes down to ancient prophecies. The idea here is that the Easter story wasn't some kind of surprise twist, but that it was the deliberate fulfillment of promises made centuries and centuries earlier. And this is where that idea gets really interesting. The guide lays out these direct parallels, matching up prophecies from the Old Testament with events in the New Testament. For example, it'll point to a passage in Zechariah talking about a king arriving on a donkey, and boom, it connects it directly to Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. Or it takes a line from Isaiah about a man who stays silent in front of his accusers and links it right to Jesus' trial. This pattern, this idea of prophecy and fulfillment, is really the bedrock of the guide's whole argument.
Okay, so we've looked at the historical framework and the ancient prophecies. But what does all of this mean for people today? What's the core message? Well, according to our source, it all boils down to one central concept, the atonement, and the kind of personal power that it represents.
Now, the guide gives us a really specific definition for this. It describes the atonement as the way Jesus Christ offers people the power to overcome their deepest, most fundamental challenges. So this isn't just about something that happened a long, long time ago. The idea here is that it's an active power you can tap into right now. So what kind of challenges are we talking about here? The guide breaks it down into 4 main areas. You've got the big ones, of course, sin and death. But then it gets super personal, including the everyday struggles that the source calls trials and weaknesses. And to really bring this home, to make it less abstract and more personal, the guide uses this quote from Isaiah. It frames this power as something that's here to heal the brokenhearted and proclaim liberty to the captives. You see how that shifts the focus? It's not just about big cosmic ideas anymore, it's about real individual healing.
And that brings us right back to today. How does this guide connect all of this theology to the real-life experience of trying to find peace and joy, especially around the Easter season?
One thing that's really interesting is that the guide tackles something super real and relatable. It asks, what do you do if you're someone who just doesn't feel joyful during this season? It's basically saying, hey, we get it. Holidays can be tough, which is a really human and empathetic thing to include. So, what's the answer it offers? Well, it's pretty practical. The document suggests that one way to find peace is to actively go out and read, and even share hopeful messages from the scriptures. The idea is that peace isn't just a passive feeling you wait for, it's something you can actually cultivate, for yourself and for other people. And they use this quote from the Gospel of John to really nail this idea down. The key part of this quote is that little phrase, not as the world giveth. So the point the guide is making is that this is a totally different kind of peace, one that's deeper, more stable, because it doesn't depend on what's happening in your life. And this is how the whole guide wraps up. It flips the script and turns the question back on you. After laying out all its arguments about history, prophecy, and this personal power, it leaves you with this one thing to think about. How would you explain to a friend why Jesus Christ is important to you? It's a really powerful shift from just explaining things to personal reflection, and it's the perfect place for us to end our explainer too.